Been talking quite a bit about Waitangi this week, and it does seem to be the main political topic of 2024 so far this year, which honestly I think is a bit of a shame because there's all sorts of other important topics to do with politics and social policy. There's other problems in Aotearoa that need our attention. Salvation Army have certainly got the finger on the pulse in terms of key social policy issues. Senior Social Policy Analyst for the Parliamentary Unit, Paul Barber, joins me on the program. Paul, kia ora. Thanks for your time today.
Yeah, kia ora, Andrew. Good to be here.
Some of the other policies with, I suppose the media focused on Waitangi this week, but some of the other policy areas that have been announced or some of the other, I suppose, indicators that we've seen this week. Unemployment has risen, but not as much as people were expecting it to. Can we see this as sort of good news, Paul?
Yeah, I think anything that's not as bad as they thought it might be is sort of good news, yes.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I find it intriguing that in the commentary there's almost some of the, if you take the perspective of some of the economic commentators seem to think it's disappointing that it's not going up.
Sure.
When we look at that from the perspective of the people that we in the Salvation Army work with, it's that group of people is most affected by the rise in unemployment, and anything that's not as bad as we said is sort of good news. However,
continue.
We've still got 22,000 more unemployed people at the end of December than we had a year earlier. So. That's not been good news for that group.
That's certainly not good news for 22,000 people. A 4% rise, which, as we mentioned, was lower than some of the economic forecasts, particularly given the pressure that immigration has put on labour markets. They're expecting a much higher figure, but I'm sure more rises to come. It's going to be a tough year ahead for many families, Paul.
Yeah, this is the question. We're seeing a change in the employment market because there is a large immigration surge here, and it's fantastic to see a whole heap of people back in New Zealand, when coming to New Zealand wanting to live and work and contribute. And it's interesting that so there have been a lot more jobs as well. There's been a lot of growth in actual employment during the year, so that's kind of kept pace almost with the growth in the workforce, but not quite. And people are. And I guess how this connects, I guess, to the Waitangi discussion is also the fact that when unemployment rises, the impacts fall unevenly and unfairly. And you just have to look at the latest set of figures that there are two unemployment figures effectively. There's the unemployment figures that Māori and Pacific people face, and there's the unemployment rates that European, Asian, New Zealanders face. And the Māori rates at the end of December was over 8%.
Wow.
And has been that way.
So, I mean, double the national average, as it were.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, and of those, 22,000 increase, about nearly 7,000 identify as Māori. So they've taken a third of that growth in the unemployment, but Māori make up about 14% of the 15% of the workforce. So that, and I'm afraid we're expecting unemployment to continue to rise.
Yeah.
And the forecasts are up to 5% unemployment, which would be another 30,000 people. So when we're having these discussions about, the cost of bringing down inflation, because that's one of the reasons why there's this focus on slowing the economy down, which is a code for people losing their jobs, then who's going to be paying the cost of that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, this is a huge issue, and I know that you guys have put a lot of work into the State of the Nation report, which is coming up in the next week or so, and are looking in particular at a range of different areas, including the comparison for Māori and non-Māori in terms of outcomes there. Certainly looking forward to more detail in that report. Something else which has come up from an economic point of view, and again, it seems unusual. Some economists are saying, gosh, isn't this good news? The minimum wage has gone up, but almost by a very, very small amount. I mean, yes, it's good news in some ways that it's gone up, but some economists are saying, oh gosh, we're so glad it wasn't a larger increase because of inflationary pressures. What's your thoughts on this, Paul?
Well, we've been really clear over the last few years that we strongly support lifting the minimum wage, at least by inflation, and actually to lift wages to try and reduce wage inequality and bring up the lowest earnings towards something that is actually a livable income. It's the minimum wage, even at its current level, is not really a livable income for New Zealand. Yes, so the 2% is less than inflation, so it's effectively a real pay cut, and that's what we've got to be clear about. Average wages are rising. That was another piece of interesting information in the last and latest information that's come out, is that average wages are continuing to kind of keep pace with inflation and rising, but the average covers all wages. Minimum one recognises those lowest paid workers. Well, they're going to be falling behind again.
If you're on minimum wage, you are going backwards, and put it in context with the other statistics, that is if you can get a job. These are the people, of course, which you're encountering through the services of the Salvation Army. Another policy area which we'll touch on just briefly here is the launch of the Tough on Crime. We heard a lot of rhetoric about this, of course, in the election campaign. There's one area in particular that I wanted to focus on, ending the cultural reports that are considered when judges make sentencing decisions. This is seen as part of the government's Tough on Crime. But from my point of view, Paul, some short-term thinking in this regard, saving money in the short term but costing more economically and socially in the long term.
Well, it's not saving very much money either. If according to the minister, $7 million was spent on cultural reports. The correction spends around $2 billion a year. So It is absolutely a drop in the ocean. And justice spends another billion or so. This is this is a part of what's funded through the legal aid process for people who are in really vulnerable situations. So I guess their initial thoughts is, would really like to understand what the rationale behind this is. And to see some perspective on what these cultural reports are doing, which is actually helping judges when they're doing sentencing to understand better what's going on for this person in their life.
So is this just a money-saving exercise from the government, or is this part of the Tough on Crime to stop people getting away with stuff because of a cultural report? We haven't seen the details on that yet.
No, but I mean, it is specifically couched in the media release around the discounts on sentencing that are being associated with cultural reports. Again, we don't have the details on how many cultural reports leading to how many discounts of what, and how many, what the actual impact of these cultural reports are on real sentencing. I'd really like to know those numbers. And I think that's where we're really interested in seeing some facts to help them understand the direction that things are going in.
Well, hey, very much appreciate the work that you guys in the Social Policy and Parliamentary Unit are involved with, doing some of this analysis and looking at some of the consequences of social policies in particular. As I say, very much looking forward to seeing the State of the Nation report that's going to be released in the next few days. Looking forward to unpacking some of that, and I suppose a benchmark for the new government as to how things are at the moment for us in terms of social policy, and a challenge for them to do better in some of these areas, Paul.
Yeah, we're looking forward to sharing. It's been quite a bit. It's a lot of work putting it together, and we're sort of in those final stages now. And it really is a time to be looking at what has happened, and where we think what we've got to. We've seen improvements, and there are always the places where there have been improvements and things that we can be thankful for and hopeful from, as well as getting real about some of those challenges we have. And some of the problems we've got, some of them have been with us for a long time, and we've tried various solutions. And we're just talking about crime and punishment and imprisonment. These are the things we've got to be courageous and just get in there and do our best to come up with solutions that can help people live more fulfilled lives. And that's all those affected, both within the criminal justice system, with poverty, with housing hardship, and so on. So yeah, looking forward to talking about that, and just remembering that what we're doing when we look at statistics, we're always looking from that perspective of those who are really on the margins, really who we're social services and the Salvation Army and the other organizations we work with, are supporting and seeking to be beside. So that's our perspective on every kind of policy that's announced.
I appreciate the work that you do and the perspective that you bring, Paul. Thanks for your time today.